Father James Lavelle is sitting in the church listening to confessions. From behind the screen, a man begins with a shocking statement about his childhood trauma. Father James calmly responds, saying it is an unusual way to begin. When asked if he is joking, Father James becomes serious and listens carefully. The man explains that when he was very young, he was abused by a priest, an experience that left deep emotional and physical scars. Father James asks if he wants to report the person responsible, but the man says it no longer matters because the priest died years ago. He then says something disturbing. Punishing a bad priest would mean nothing, but harming a good priest would make people pay attention. He tells Father James that in 7 days he plans to kill him on the beach. Father James lives a quiet and humble life. He sleeps in a small room with only a bed, a cross, and his dog by his side. He spends his days walking along the beach and talking to the people of the town. One day he notices a young altar boy sitting on the beach drawing a picture. The drawing shows a landscape with 2 figures in it. Father James asks who they are, but the boy says he doesn't know. He also mentions that he has been dreaming a lot about ghosts lately. After the church service, Father James talks with Father Leary, who casually gossips about people in the town. He even repeats things he claims to have heard in confession and makes insensitive remarks about Simon, the only black man living there. Father James listens quietly and does not mention the threat made against him. Soon after James's daughter Fiona arrives in town, she is trying to recover after a serious personal crisis and wants to stay out of sight for a while. Many people in the town are surprised to learn that a priest can have a daughter. James explains that he chose to become a priest only after his wife passed away. At the local pub, some men try to flirt with Fiona, but she shows no interest. Father James also avoids drinking alcohol, not because he dislikes it, but because he knows he enjoys it too much. Later, James visits Veronica Brennan, who had been wearing sunglasses during church to hide a bruise. She quietly tells him that her husband caused it. Concerned, James goes to speak with her husband, Jack Brennan, the town butcher. Jack seems surprised by the visit but stays calm and joking. He dismisses the accusation, saying his wife has emotional issues and denies hurting her. Instead, he suggests that Simon, who is having an affair with Veronica, might be responsible. James questions this unusual relationship, but Jack claims their arrangement works for them. James then meets Simon, who strongly rejects the accusation. Offended and tense, Simon warns James to stay out of other people's lives. James spends time with a local writer, an older and bitter man who talks openly about his fear of growing weak and dependent with age. He says he wants control over how his life ends, rather than slowly losing himself. James listens, but does not agree with his dark outlook. Later, James meets with the local bishop and finally reveals what happened during the confession. He explains that a man threatened his life and that he believes the danger is real. James also says he knows who the person is. The bishop explains that since the man did not seek forgiveness and spoke about committing a crime, James would not be breaking church rules by informing the authorities. James then visits his friend, Inspector Stanton. The inspector appears distracted and uncomfortable as someone nearby behaves inappropriately and makes crude jokes toward James. James ignores the remarks and focuses on why he came. He tells Stanton about the threat and asks for protection. After a tense and awkward moment between the 2 men, Stanton finally agrees to help and gives James a way to defend himself. While out on a walk, Father James and his daughter Fiona run into Michael Fitzgerald, a wealthy and arrogant man in town. Michael speaks rudely to James, and Fiona immediately calls him out for his behavior. Michael says he has a business-related offer and asks James to meet him later. At Michael's large house, James finds him heavily drunk and behaving recklessly. Inside, Michael continues to insult James and openly mocks the church. He admits that he has lost his family because he feels disconnected from everyone and everything. He talks about cheating people for money and says that even though he knows it is wrong, he feels no guilt. Michael believes he will never face consequences because too many powerful people are involved in the same corruption. Even so, he says donating to the church feels like something he is supposed to do. To prove how little he cares, he deliberately ruins something valuable. When he asks if James is shocked, James calmly replies that Michael has already destroyed everything important in his life. James then leaves. Later that night, James is called to the hospital after a tragic incident involving reckless behavior by local youths. A man has died, and James is asked to comfort the grieving wife and perform his final prayers. He quietly supports her in her moment of loss. Outside, James speaks with Dr. Hart, a doctor who openly questions faith and makes sarcastic remarks about religion. Despite his cynicism, the doctor admits that part of him wishes he could be like James, a good and respected priest. He then walks away with a dark joke, showing how nearly everyone in the town hides bitterness behind humor. Throughout his time there, James constantly faces mockery and harsh reminders of the church's past, as the people around him seem eager to test his patience and faith. James agrees to meet Freddie Joyce, a deeply troubled man known for committing several serious crimes in the past. Freddie speaks in an unsettling, joking way and admits that there is still one victim the police were never able to locate. He says his memory from that time is unclear because of his mental state. Despite his behavior, Freddie suddenly breaks down and says he feels genuine regret for what he has done. He begins to cry, expecting some kind of response. James listens quietly but does not say a word. Later, James is cleaning the church when a local young man named Milo approaches him. Milo is frustrated with his social life and says he struggles to talk to women. He also mentions that he is thinking about joining the army. James speaks honestly and firmly, saying that taking a life is wrong and should never be taken lightly. He questions the idea of seeking purpose through violence and tells Milo that such impulses should not be encouraged. When Milo admits he feels drawn to the idea, James redirects him, suggesting he leave town, see the world, and meet new people in bigger cities instead. That night, there is a lively gathering at the local bar. The mood is celebratory, and people are drinking and socializing. Fiona notices Dr. Hart and finds him interesting, but James warns her to keep her distance. Fiona assures him that she has moved on from unhealthy habits and is in a better place now. The celebration is suddenly interrupted when someone notices smoke coming from the church. The entire town rushes toward it, but the fire has already spread too far. By morning, the church is completely destroyed. Michael meets Father James and Father Leary to apologize for his rude behavior earlier. To show goodwill, he offers money to help rebuild the burned church. He first writes a modest amount, then increases it after some back and forth. James calmly challenges him, and Michael finally donates a very large sum before leaving. Throughout the meeting, Father Leary flatters Michael excessively, calling him a good man. Michael bluntly disagrees and even mocks the church, pointing out that it has paid heavily for past scandals. Leary brushes this off, claiming those problems belong to the distant past. Later, James crosses paths again with the troubled writer, who mentions that arrangements for personal protection have been made. James avoids giving him anything and leaves. When James returns home, he discovers a devastating loss involving his beloved dog. Overcome with emotion, he quietly says goodbye and lays the dog to rest. The next day, James's daughter prepares to leave town. She tells him that when her mother died and James turned to the church, it felt like she lost both parents at once. It was painful for her, but she has learned to live with it. Before leaving, she asked James to say goodbye to the dog for her, not knowing what has happened. James promises he will. That night, James goes to the bar, clearly overwhelmed and drinking more than usual. Tensions rise as he confronts people who mock him and openly blame the church for their past suffering. The atmosphere becomes hostile, and it's clear James no longer feels welcome. The night ends in chaos, with anger and resentment finally boiling over, showing just how broken the town and James himself has become. Bruised and shaken, James returns home and runs into Father Leary. Still upset and drunk, James finally lets out his frustration. He tells Leary that he is ineffective at his role and would be better off in a completely different job. His words are harsh and emotional. The next morning, James wakes up to find Leary preparing to leave town. Leary is clearly hurt and confused, saying he never realized James felt such resentment toward him. James calmly explains that he doesn't hate Leary at all. What troubles him more is Leary's lack of honesty and principles. Despite everything, James sincerely wishes him well. Afterward, James reflects on everything that has happened. He realizes that no matter how much faith he has in the people of the town, that faith is not returned. Feeling defeated, he decides to leave for good. He packs his few belongings and heads to the airport. At the airport, James unexpectedly meets the widow of the man who recently died in the accident. As he watches the man's coffin being handled carelessly during loading, the moment deeply affects him. Seeing this lack of dignity makes James stop and reconsider his choice. Moved by what he witnesses, James turns around and decides to return to the town instead of leaving. James stands quietly on the rocky beach, waiting. Michael approaches him and admits that he truly feels regret and wants help. James tells him they can talk later. The writer notices James and says he has finally finished his book. He asks if they can spend some time together, but James gently says he has another meeting and promises they will talk soon. James then calls his daughter Fiona. She starts asking about her past mistakes, but James stops her. He says there has already been too much focus on wrongdoing and that it's better to talk about goodness instead. He tells her that forgiveness has always been his greatest strength. Fiona tells him that she forgives him. James ends the call and walks toward the beach, passing the altar boy on the way. The man who threatened James finally arrives. He seems surprised that James came willingly. James calmly tells him this doesn't have to happen, but the man insists that it does. They talk about pain, anger, and long-held emotional wounds. James questions why innocent things had to be destroyed, and the man reveals how deeply disconnected he feels from everything. A sudden act of violence follows. The altar boy hears the noise and runs toward them, but James tells him to leave and stay safe. Moments later, James' life comes to an end on the beach. The town moves on as if nothing has changed. Life continues. Later, we see that the man responsible is now in prison. Fiona comes to visit him. Sitting across from each other with glass between them, she hesitates, then picks up the phone. She begins to cry, leaving the ending quiet, heavy, and unresolved. Thanks for watching. If you like our work, please like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content.